Okay. All right, so tonight is January 18th. It's 7 o'clock. This is the COPC meeting, and we always start with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'd stand and please join me. All right, thank you very much. Let's introduce ourselves, and we'll start with Precinct 1. Do we have Chris Pratt on the line? No. Yeah,
Precinct 1, Christine Pratt.
Excellent. Precinct 2.
Matt Tavares, Precinct 2.
Precinct 3.
Dale Weber, Precinct 3, where it all began.
Precinct 4.
Precinct 4, Claire Montanari.
Precinct 5. Not yet. Okay. Precinct 6.
Precinct 6, Bill Arienti.
Precinct 7.
Dave Golden, Precinct 7.
Precinct 8.
Precinct 8, George McKay.
Precinct 9, Catherine Holmes. That's myself. Precinct 10.
Precinct 10, Alan Costello.
Precinct 11.
Precinct 11, Frank O'Brien.
Precinct 12.
Precinct 12, Pat Adelman.
Precinct 13.
Precinct 13, Susan Wentworth.
Welcome, Susan. Precinct 14. Not yet. Precinct 15. Not yet. I do know he will be here this evening. Precinct 16.
Precinct 16, Pompey Delafield.
Precinct 17.
Precinct 17, Joe Hutchinson.
Oh, hey, Joe. Welcome. I didn't see you come in. And Precinct 18.
Precinct 18, Carmen Lee Frieri.
Okay, wonderful. All right, very good. So we are now going to move right into the agenda. We're going to be very efficient this evening. The first item on the agenda is Traveling Town Meeting, and it will be presented by Kevin Lynch from Precinct 5. And I think there's a sign-in sheet up there. Do you see one? Pat will get you a sign-in sheet so you can sign in. Thank you.
Time's ticking. Oh, I was
speak.
waiting.
Yeah, kick off. You're fine.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for allowing me to present this idea that is really not my idea. It's coming from many, many people that I've talked over a number of years. And if some of you, a lot of you, I found out have already printed out the actual presentation. So I have extras here, and I also have a map of Plymouth with the various precincts on there. Well, the idea that, again, people were talking to me about is how can we meet our town meeting representatives in person and get to know them and ask them questions about what's going on in town, or maybe have them help some of us even navigate perhaps some of the things that we have difficulty with in town hall. So if you look at the objective, is simply provide a forum for they can interact with town meeting, not only representatives, but maybe even other town officials could go there, and at 4 different designated sites. And so now the rationale is because people really would like to be able to go in, talk with someone in person, perhaps, and be able to interact with them and have them understand a little bit what's going on. Now, the details, if you look at the bottom portion of the paper, it says bi-monthly meetings. My first thought was monthly meetings, but that was a little bit of a stretch. So bi-monthly meetings, and what's interesting, I chose, or again, people suggested, the odd months. And if you look, the March is the month before town meeting, so the town meeting representatives can go and present what's on the warrant and maybe get feedback from their residents, the constituents they're meeting with, and they can, form their opinions a little bit more in depth. And then if you look, May, the 5th month, well, that's the month after town meeting. So maybe folks could go and find out how the representatives voted on various issues. And again, you do the same thing with September. That's the 9-month, and the November, the 11th month, with October being town meeting. Now, as far as the locations, pause for a quick sec. This map is on the town website, and I did the best I could to reproduce it. And these are the 18 precincts. And my thought, again, not just my thoughts, but many people's thoughts, was to, if you had a meeting downtown, it could draw from a number of different precincts, not only the town meeting members, but also the residents could come in and talk. And if you go and turn the page to the top of the second page right there, the downtown, that could reach out to precincts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 13, 18. 9 precincts could actually go and meet here at the town hall with the residents meeting those town meeting members and discussing various issues. Well, if you then look, first page bottom, it's the second Monday, you could then meet in the area of Manomet and have it be at the Sims House. And again, that would draw from various precincts 4, 6, 7, 14 through 16, and 18. That's 7 precincts. So on and on it goes, and you have the third Monday you could meet in Cedarville, and the fourth Monday. I was thinking of having it be open, but Pine Hills has such a large number of people that I put it on the fourth Monday. Now, that would be 1 month, and then the second month would be free, and then you come back the following month to talk about various things. Now, the time frame. This is a little ambitious if you look at it. The bottom, from 3 to 8 o'clock. That's 5 hours. How could you do that? Well, there are town meeting members that go above and beyond. And if you look at the second page, there's 9 precincts could be there, a total of 81 town meeting members. Manomet could be a total of 63 town meeting members, encompassing that area. Cedarville, 63 town meeting members. And again, Pine Hills would be 72. So that's the gist of it. I don't think I need to go into anything further, but as you can see, the last page says, conversation. You can meet and greet one another. You could have people from the various precincts, haven't seen one another for a while. How's the wife and the kids? How's the husband, etc.? What's going on with your job? But then the discussion would be about basically what is going on in town with the various issues that have happened or will be coming up. And finally, when I put documentation here, again, some people, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do that. How do I get this documentation or that documentation? So that's why I put documentation right there. So conversation, discussion, and documentation. And of course, this last one, someone told me, an informed citizenry is an active citizenry, which I think we all saw that with this particular voting that happened the past Saturday. There were a lot of people really focused on it, and they came out. So it was a good number of people. And so I'm hoping this is not a silver bullet. This is not the be-all and end-all. This is one way amongst many ways that we can communicate and educate our citizens. So with that being said,
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Lynch.
I got it under 7 minutes so far.
You did very well this evening. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Lynch?
Yes, sir. George, I appreciate it. I'm not surprised you're one of those ones that will ask. Go, sir.
Well, I like the concept.
What's
I like
that?
the concept, but I have some questions on the implementation.
There's always, that's as they say, the devil's in the details, but go ahead.
It's in the details. Would there be a moderator at each one of these?
You see, if you look at it, it says conversation. I don't think a moderator would be needed. I mean, you're coming there to meet. These are people that have told me, we're coming there to meet our constituents. It's very, very low-key. How you doing? What's going on? Hey, I am a town meeting member. Oh, where do you live? Oh, you're in precinct such and such, and oh, there's a precinct member from your precinct, and town meeting member from your precinct. So I would say no, George, to really keep it, it's almost like a, lack of better words, a mini town hall. How's that? Question? Any other question? Oh.
Mr. Brewster has a question.
Yeah, I see your concept. I'm wondering what the difference between doing a better job of promoting caucuses than what you're doing, because it sounds like a caucus that is better promoted. And I know, for example, where it all began, they have, caucuses quite a bit, and their membership is very involved. I'm just wondering, wouldn't it be better energy to promote our caucuses better and have them, because it's an open meeting and any citizen should be, involved. I'm in Precinct 15, and there's some traffic studies that we're looking at right now. And I've been trying to get involved, and a lot of people are asking different people, who's my town meeting member?
Correct.
So I think we are falling down in letting people know who their town meeting members are. But I would see a better use of our energy saying our caucuses need to be better advertised. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think that, if we were to use our caucuses better and say, hey, you should come to our caucus and talk about that. That's my 2 cents.
No, I hear what you're saying, and that's really a lot of what people have been talking to me about is like, they don't know who the town meeting member is. This is an opportunity whereby the town meeting members, it's almost like there's no heavy lifting per se, whereby if it's an ongoing thing every other month, and, the first Monday, so people can have it, they can get used to it, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a, designated caucus meeting for a particular precinct, but you could have a number of different precinct members that would come there, be able to answer questions not only for their own members of their precinct, but for other members. And then the following month, I'm not taking away from anybody's caucus, but the following month, maybe people says, hey, can you have a caucus meeting for our precinct? And then next thing you know, it could turn into something like that. Again, it's not a silver bullet, but it is a way to kind of like many hands make light work. That's all.
Follow up from Mr. Brewster.
And the only other suggestion, I work for a living, so I wouldn't be able to make your 3 to 5 o'clock.
And that is why, if you were to look at the second page, there is 9 precincts times 9. There's 81 town meeting members.
Yeah.
My guess is there's a few in there that are retired, such as myself, that could show up and, could cover those time periods. And then as people come home from work, whatever. And again, the whole idea is not have it every month, every Monday, etc. So it really, again, many hands make light work.
Okay, any other questions for, yes, I can't see the people. Carmen and Bill? Oh, and then Pompey. Go right ahead, Mr. Yep, go right ahead, please.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch, could you just provide a little bit of clarification for me? I'm curious to know, is this more or less structured than a caucus?
I would say it's less structured. In other words, there's no agenda. There's nothing you've got to go and definitely cover. It's informational. And again, it's, lack of better words, it's an informal mini town hall, for lack of better words.
So no agenda, no meeting minutes, no quorum, no required attendees?
Oh, so pause for a moment. I'm hoping you're going to go here. So we are subject to open meeting law. And so those things have to happen. Like you have to have posted minutes, you have to have posted meetings, and you have to have an agenda. And so that would be something you need to consider in your recommendation. I interrupted you. Please go ahead.
So, just say yes to no meeting minutes, no agendas, no quorums, no, I mean, this is your plan, right? This is more of a casual conversation, getting to know, meet and greet type of thing.
That would be, yes,
Okay.
good
So-
description. And I don't know, again, I could go and I'll come back, no problem, I'll come back next meeting and I'll go up to town council and says, are we restricted by an open meeting law whereby we cannot have, quote, a meeting? Because this is not discussing something to pass, to take a vote on. This is just coming to meet your constituents. I mean, out on the street, same thing. And so I'm a little bit, I wouldn't buy into we're restricted by open the meeting law for this particular subject here.
And your objective is to provide a forum allowing the citizens to interact with each other?
Not only with themselves, hey, what are you doing? What do you think of?
With
but
town
also-
meeting reps and so on and so forth.
Sure, and if, I know Dickie Quintal at one point said that he would like to go about town and maybe have something. I know that Mr. Bulletin, with a master plan, this would dovetail very, very easily into something like that, whereby they could get feedback from the, and I've yet to actually contact those folks, but they could get feedback about the master plan. So, that's a thought.
Thank you.
Okay. And then, Mr. Orienti?
Yes, Kevin, thank you. There are a couple things that give me pause. First off, and let me just bring it up, but the Symes House would not be a place that we could use. We can't use it now. It's off limits to us until they figure out what's going to happen with it. But the other thing that gives me pause is if we're there, if the town meeting member would be there to get information or to get feedback from the community is one thing. But once the community starts asking that specific town meeting member their opinion, whereas at a caucus they could get 9 different opinions and 9 different points of view, the person asking for the opinion of that town meeting member is going to get one specific point of view. Whether that person is, trying to be as open with them or not, they are going to get that person's opinion
Right.
overriding everything else, which I don't believe is a fair representation of what the town would be trying to push for full disclosure of something.
That's a possibility, yes, sir.
I appreciate, what you're trying to do, and I agree that if we were to put it, around the town, if people were to have a way to get to and know their town officials and town meeting members, it's a much better thing. But I don't know if having it of this structure would benefit the town as much as it's written right now.
May
Very
I
good.
answer your first thought? One person, one point of view. I agree, and that person then may leave, and they think, well, gee, that must be the town. Not really, because they could also go to another of these traveling town meetings or call up their own town meeting rep and says, hey, I heard it from this person. Is that true? So it's a matter of, at least it's a starting point for people to be able to go and says, oh, I didn't know that. Or perhaps that person could inform the town meeting member about their own opinion, which might change some things. It's all informal, I hope, again, I hope that comes across, but it allows the people, it's like bringing the town government to the people, because there's very few people that unfortunately come to meetings, but if we brought the meetings to them, it might, and again, it's not a silver bullet, please understand that, but this idea came from many, many people that I've heard from over the years. Thank you.
The other thing is that we currently already have to have, I think by bylaw, a meeting in March, May, and September as caucuses. We have
March,
to have
May,
one-
and September?
We have to have one before the town meeting.
Oh, yes,
We have
sir.
to have one after the town meeting for,
It's
in May.
only
And then we
before.
have to have one in September.
May I speak to that?
Yeah, so Bill, just a quick correction. It's only prior to the spring and fall town meeting. And then, of course, if there's a special election, that's our current obligation for caucuses or the
reorganization in May.
reorganizations?
Yes,
Okay,
yep.
yep.
So
Okay, that's
those
great.
are, if I could say, those are more formal caucuses with the agenda posted, adhering to the open meeting law. This is a, informal, hey, how are you, what's going on, here's some thoughts, and et cetera. So it is not in place of, I hope you understand, it is not in place of a caucus.
But to be clear, though, Mr. Lynch, in order to have town meeting members gathering, and there are very strict rules and regulations around that. So it can't be informal in the sense, you still need to have an agenda, even if it says, we're going to have a meet and greet, you have to have meeting minutes. Especially if you're saying in your documentation that you're going to be inviting elected officials into town. These people, like the planning board and the select board, they are subject to open meeting law. So you have to be cognizant of that in your planning. Mr. Delafield, go right ahead.
May I speak to that, please?
Yes.
Okay. I realize my time is short. One of the sticking points, it appears, and I didn't think it was connected to this, was the open meeting law. And your concern, and I see, some nodding of heads, I'll be more than happy, and I will run this by town council, and please, make sure that this does not violate open meeting law. So I appreciate, this is what I'm here for, because that way I can go back to the people that helped me form this, and I can say, okay, the sticking point is the open meeting law. And of course, they'll be, well, what's that all about? And I'll explain it as best I can.
Yeah, this is the same concept as your scallop room idea in a
Actually-
lot of ways, except that it's bringing the meeting to the local regions. But I want to make sure that you get all of the questions answered from the people on the board. So I want to move to Mr. Delafield.
just speak toward that. It is not, please, 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 I ask you please not to connect that idea of the scallop meeting room roundtable 3 years ago, which I thought was a pretty good idea, but it never went anywhere because of COVID and other things. It was too cumbersome. Very, very, very cumbersome.
Okay, fair enough.
This is
Let's
very
move on.
informal.
We're going to move on so that you can get
Okay,
your
not a
questions.
problem.
So I have Mr. Delafield. I also have Ms. Claire that wants to speak with you, so go right ahead, please.
So first of all, I want to thank you. I think this is a very good thought and very nice introduction. Some of what I had to say, I think Catherine's already said. I am most worried about the organization of this, and I think it has to be carefully thought out as to how you do this. Are these going to be things where, we should have coffee and donuts? Are they, I don't care, but how do you organize it to get people? Because I think you'll find naturally just from my caucuses that you may not get very many people. And so you're going to have to find a way to make this more desirable. The other thing I wanted to say was just looking from a perspective of my own precinct, some of these, people only have to attend one of these. My precinct is up for 3 out of the 4.
You don't have
which
to.
is a pretty big commitment for our town meeting members. And I say that because I think it's unfair to say you're going to be at one of these and then have nobody show up. So you're really committing your precinct to attend each one of these. And I would much prefer, for instance, in my own, that we decide which one, probably Pine Hills, would be the most logical for my precinct to attend, but not try to get to all 3 of them. Thank you.
May I?
Right.
Okay. It is not a requirement to be at this. It is just a suggestion that it could encompass those precincts, and if a town meeting member want to attend a couple, that's fine. If they only want to attend one, that's also fine. But I think that what the people will really appreciate is we, the town officials elected, will come out and meet the constituents.
Okay. Claire?
Just let me follow
Go
up
ahead.
on that, because
Sure.
I think that in itself states what I'm saying. If they expect to see their town meeting members there, they expect to see some of their town meeting managers there. So you are committing, in the case of 3 of these, from my precinct, having somebody there, we look like we're not very interested in the town.
You know, I hear what you're saying, and I hope I did not, I'm sorry if I expressed it that way. I hope you don't, you don't think that. If anything, you know, if you intended one, well, why should you have to attend the other 2 for that matter? And it's like, and if those people think that, well, that's on them. And I'm kind of like backpedaling here a little bit because I don't want you to think it's a requirement. I never put that in there. I just said it's just an outreach. That's
Okay,
all.
so we're going to move on to Claire's
Yep.
question.
I was just going to question, we have 162
Right.
town meeting members.
Right.
I'm sure they wouldn't all come. But do we have any issues with parking at any of these facilities, should we get a large crowd? We
Well,
might have a problem
If
there.
if we have problems with parking, that will be a good thing.
I understand, but it would be a bad thing for the people that are coming and trying to park their
Well, we could then
cars.
always find another venue.
Yes, and it's not a criticism, it's just a concern.
Yep.
And also, calling it travel-in town meeting wording, could we change that? I couldn't come up with an alternative, but people can get confused thinking it is a town meeting, because a lot of them don't follow. They might come just
May I-
questioning and, you know, just not really
Last thing, I'll just travel in town meeting, meet and greet.
meet and greet.
There we go.
Very good. Well, thank
Thank
you,
you,
Mr. Lynch, for
Carmen.
coming before us. All right, and we're going to move on now. We're going to talk
Thank you.
with George McKay on the litter bylaw.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I've been working on this project for a while, as most of you know. At the last town meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about things like graffiti and litter. And you can see on the board there some of the summaries of the things we voted on. We voted to spend $10,000 on cleaning up the graffiti in Holmes Park. And in addition to that, we had an Article 5 to revise a bylaw, the nuisance bylaw, and I talked about the problems of graffiti and litter in town related to that bylaw. I thought the bylaw was an overreach, and most of the town meeting members also did, and so that particular article failed. Then we went in to talk about Article 15, which was a bylaw to ban nips. And that, as you know, passed by 5 votes at the town meeting, and it failed at the town-wide ballot on January 13th. In any event, I'm just regurgitating this background because it caused me to say to myself, we're addressing graffiti and litter. Let me take a look at the town bylaw that addresses graffiti and litter. And so I did. And if you look at bylaw 77, labeled graffiti and litter, it has a very nice detailed section on graffiti. And then it ends. It does not address litter at all. It's just completely blank. And so what we found out in subsequent discussions was the reason it was blank is when this bylaw was written 10 years ago, the police department said they could not enforce the litter portion of the bylaw. And so instead of reaching a compromise agreement, the whole thing was left blank for 10 years. So for 10 years, we didn't have a bylaw that addressed litter. So I said, well, let me see. It should be relatively easy, my thought was, to put something in that does address it. And so this is just a reiteration of what I showed. There's a 2.5 pages addressing graffiti, but then it stops. So at the town meeting, I addressed some of the issues related to graffiti and litter, and this was one I talked about. This is the town-owned water barn on Long Pond Road, and on the left-hand side, it shows the graffiti that existed at the time of the town meeting, and you can see on the right-hand side, it's been replaced with a paint over.
So that's the fix.
Pardon?
That's the fix?
Yeah, that's the fix. Anyway, that cost to the town was $625. When I saw the $10,000 figure related to fixing the skating park, and I saw some of the graffiti around town, I thought the price tag on what I wanted to do, which is clean up the town graffiti, was going to be astronomical. But there are 2 large graffitis in town, and this is one of them, or was one of them, and for $625, we covered it over. So based on that, I said, well, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I think it's really bad.
What, I'm talking about the cost, not the...
Me too. $625, that looks awful.
It's
But-
better than $10,000.
Oh, my Lord. Go ahead, George, I'm sorry.
So anyway, yeah. So anyway, I also took pictures of some of the graffiti down at the waterfront because that's a tourist attraction area, and I wanted to make sure that that was taken care of, even though the graffiti there was minuscule compared to the water barn. And most of this has actually been taken care of, except for what I call fly posting, which is odd stickers on the flagpole there and odd stickers on one of the electrical outlet areas. I also found in back of Nathaniel Morton School a couple of signs that said, you know, don't go in here, it's a playground for children, et cetera, and those were painted over by somebody. And so this was sent to the town and is in the process of being fixed. And again, that's going to be a relatively inexpensive fix because I think they can just replace the signage. These are examples of other graffiti in town, 2 of which are on town property, the Nelson Park and the Plymouth Public Library. The one on the lower left is the old Salvation Army building on 6 Carver Street. And the one on the right lower half is an electrical box outside of the Verizon office.
George, I'm going to stop you here for a second because I know there's going to be people that are going to want questions, and I want to make sure you have time for it. The edits that you've proposed in this bylaw, though, I don't see any edits on graffiti. I only see it on litter. Is that accurate?
The edits on graffiti are minimal, but the reason I'm going through this in some detail is I took the wording from the graffiti issue and used it in the litter revision, except for the definition of what litter is. And thanks to Catherine Holmes, she said, if you really want to know what litter is, copy the state definition. So I'm going through this because the process I'm proposing in the bylaw for litter is very similar to the process that is currently in place for graffiti, and I'm showing that if you use the process, it works.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that you have enough time to get questions answered because the goal here is to put this in the spring warrant. Is that correct?
That's
okay,
correct.
so this is something that we will be voting on.
Right, and so I know there's going to be a lot of questions, but I'm trying to give enough background to tell you I didn't do anything super creative here all I did was copy the graffiti bylaw, the process of how to handle it, and put that in litter, except for things like the definition. And these are just some other places that I showed. This is the second largest piece of graffiti in town. It's probably 10 feet high by 30 feet long. And if somebody can tell me what the artist is trying to say there, I'd very much appreciate it, because I can't make heads or tails out of it. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, let's move on. I've given everybody a mocked-up copy of how the bylaw should change, in my opinion, after doing probably 3 or 4 months' worth of research. And I have a sample on the board of Winchester, Massachusetts bylaw, and it's somewhat representative of probably 15 to 20 other town bylaws that I looked at. The town has a program you can get to from the main page. It says, how do I report problems? And the problems that I've shown related to graffiti have followed this process to get addressed. And so I suspect that we will be using this same process in terms of what we do with litter. So anyway, that's it. You've all had a chance to look at the proposal, and let's talk about the proposal and your comments.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions. I have Mr. Weber, I have Mr. Tavares, Mr. Brewster. No? Oh, I saw your finger. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Weber.
Thank you. I've done the homework on this. George has come to Precinct 3 and presented. I make a motion that we approve.
Second that.
I can, okay, so let's open it up to discussion. So we've got a motion from Mr. Weber, and I heard a
Second.
Mr. Arienti has a second. Discussion. Mr. Tavares.
Sorry. I hope that my questions, they're questions. I hope it doesn't come across that I'm pro-litter. I had a couple concerns and had some other of my town meeting members reach out on a couple of concerns, and they echoed mine. Particularly one that I want to kind of draw our attention to is Section 4D. Thus, the town requires any signage, including election signs, to be dated with the event occurrence date. I know we have, hopefully I can keep this short. We have issues with people voting. We also have issues with people running to fill positions within the town government. And this may seem small at the moment, but when you talk about election signs, I know a lot of town meeting members or select board members, and if they're running for re-election, are reusing the signs because they're very costly. And you're requiring a date on those signs. That being said, I also don't know how that dovetails down or up to state or federal signs. It also, I wanted to know if you maybe cross-reference this with our actual bylaw on election signs, or our rules and regulations on election signs, just because I think it's just that was one of my questions, so I don't know if you want to answer that first.
It doesn't go against the current laws.
Mm-hmm.
It came out because for two reasons. One is we were having elections and people were saying things like, pardon my English here, but I want to vote for Kevin Canty. He's got signs all over the place, and I really like the guy. But when is the election? So that was one of the things that turned up when we were looking at trying to increase voter turnout, was to put a date on the election signs.
Well, I think that's up to the candidate. I think you're making a requirement of a candidate.
Well, it came from two areas. One is to increase voter turnout,
Mm-hmm.
and the second one was a litter issue where many times the losing candidate just says, okay, I put out 25 signs, let me leave them there. And so if somebody looks at that sign, they don't know necessarily whether the date has gone by or not.
Right.
So-
Well, that's where we get into the bigger issue of how the town promotes local elections, I think.
Well, it also controls the litter issue. It solves two problems.
But, and then, so that's my concern with that, and I personally don't think that that's a fair burden to put on anybody, especially considering we have election sign, I mean, they can be only certain sizes, it's in there. I think the pickup of those signs after an election is something that needs to be more enforced than it is. The only other question that came up that I had from a constituent was just the cost of each fine. They were just interested as to kind of where you started from, just because it seems really low in the beginning. And then it kind of dovetails into my other question is, so somebody puts up election signs and they have 30 signs, is that considered this multiplied fine for each offense, or is just one sign and all of those types of signs for your campaign, is that an offense? So that was just kind of where you got the kind of the pricing structure for that, and then I'll leave you with one last question, and you can answer them and then move on from me talking, was just the private property requirement of twice annually, and then including specific removals following certain events like lawn parties within 48 hours of the event. I just personally, while I agree with the spirit of it, clean up your mess, I get a little hesitant on requirements after people's parties that they have 2 days to clean them up. But
Well, I think, before we take additional questions, because those are very good, and I struggled with those concepts. When Catherine pointed out to me I could go to the state to define litter, I also went to the state to look at the consequences of what that was. And the Mass General Law says a perpetrator of these shall be fined not more than $5,500 for the first offense, and not to exceed $15,000 for each subsequent offense. And I fell off my chair when I read that, because I said, I'm not going to put that in the bylaw, even though it's a state mandate.
so that's, in here, it looks like 15.00, so I read that as $15 for every
Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's a typo.
So it's 15, I mean.
The state says $5,500 for the first offense and $15,000 for every subsequent offense. That's what the state says. And I said, oh, my God, I can't put that in our bylaw, even though it's a state mandate. So I was struggling with it in this building, and Kelly, the town clerk, came by, and she says, why don't you just take the fines from burglar alarm problems? So if somebody's burglar alarm goes off by mistake, there's a fine of nothing. But if it goes off 3 times, you get $75. So I said, well, that's probably more amenable than going with the $5,500 and the $15,000. So those two things were kind of a compromise, and I didn't want to not have a penalty. The other issue which came up, and maybe somebody is going to ask this question, is the last time around this went down in flames because the police chief said, I'm not going to enforce this. So the way this is written, it's written very carefully. So if we have a police department that does not want to enforce it, or wants to enforce it periodically, or wants to enforce it every third Wednesday of the month, they can do that. Because under 5, it starts off, the police chief or his designee may, from time to time, provide perpetrators of either graffiti or litter written notice of violation. So it's written so if we have a police chief that doesn't want to do it, he doesn't have to do it. If we have a police chief that wants to do it, he can do it. So it's a little bit vague in that area, and it's left up to the police department what they want to do. So anyway, that's the logic of why.
Okay, so we've got Mr. Brewster. Or first, is there a follow-up from Mr. Tavares? No. Mr. Brewster, I think I saw Mr. Golden, Alan, Mr. Costello, And is that it online? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Brewster.
I'm stuck on the election signs. It's funny that you should mention Mr. Canty as your, I don't know why you said foul language, but
Because he's here.
I was running against Mr. Canty, trying to keep up with his signage, and I can talk to how much it costs per sign, and I can talk about having lost. I may go in the future, and it would be extremely cost ineffective for me to put the date on the sign. And I was one of the losers, and I'm required by law, I believe it's 7 days, I have to have all those signs down. So I would strongly encourage and ask you to take that out, because I would have a hard time voting for it personally. and I would encourage you to go to the town and ask how we could enforce the rule of picking up your signs after you lose better, because this is a case of creating a bylaw that is already a bylaw in somewhere else. So I would deeply encourage you to take the signs out.
I have a sign vendor in town who is willing to do that at no charge. Make you little stickers if you want them.
I'm still, I got to put those. Yeah.
You got to put stickers on
You're
them.
talking 500 signs.
Well, if you have 500 signs, you want to have 500 volunteers that put a sticker on it.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on. So, Mr. Brewster, do you have any other comments on the bylaw?
No, I just strongly encourage you, if you want it to pass, I would take that out.
Yeah. And Mr. Golden?
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. And I would just add to what Wrestling said about the signs. They'll also increase the waste stream if we're having to order new signs for every election that we have.
So I've got a sign vendor in town who will make you those stickers for nothing.
Maybe today.
Is it in a contract, Mr. McKay?
Maybe today, but when they
Is he union?
when they start having to print stickers for every election to the tune of 1,000 stickers a candidate, 500 stickers a candidate, I think they're going to change their mind.
Well, I put that in not so much, I thought it solved three problems. One is to get voter turnout up slightly, teeny tiny bit.
Yep.
Two is to have people pick up their signs, or other people pick them up.
Sure.
And so I put that in as a nice to have for those three reasons. But
Yeah, well, I understand the sentiment behind it. I think that the committee has made itself clear that that's not something that they would want to support.
Yeah.
I also, my main question, and I, like Mr. Tavares, don't want to come off as pro-litter because I abhor litter. My question is, does Mass General Law not apply to us here in town in terms of litter?
it applies.
Okay. So why do we need an additional and less stringent in terms of fining structure bylaw that?
Why do we need
to supplant?
any of our bylaws that do, like the graffiti part? You could make my life easy, and we'll just not have a graffiti and litter bylaw.
I agree with that. I don't understand why we would duplicate and reduce the fine of an existing law at the state level. We have the law is drafted around proximity to public highways and bodies of water. We've got 4 highways in town, 37 miles of coastline, 450 lakes and ponds. We've got rivers, we've got brooks. I don't think that there's an inch of town where the Mass General Law wouldn't apply. So I'm not sure that we need to go through this exercise, especially when there's contention on other elements of the bylaw, and especially where it reduces the fine. I want if someone gets caught littering, I want that $5,500 fine to apply to them, and I don't want Plymouth to be reducing that.
Well, it's never done, so it means nothing the way it is.
So, Mr. Costello, Mr. Golden, do you have a follow-up?
I'll just respond, George, that you said it's not happening now. You've just said that Section 5 allows it to continue to not happen. So I think that we will see this continue to not happen in the future.
Okay, Mr. Costello.
Yes, Mr. McKay, to sort of follow up on Mr. Golden, the problem I've had reading through the presentation is perpetrator. Am I confused, or are you really calling the perpetrator a landowner, or are you actually going after the person that commits the litter or graffiti? Is this, so it seems, geared more towards either the public land owned by the town or private land owned by any resident in town, and they all of a sudden become a perpetrator for another person's actions? Am I confused, or are you covering both ends?
I think the definition covers both ends. It says that, for example, if you take private property, somebody can come along and throw litter on your property, and that person is the perpetrator. If you throw stuff on your own property, or one of your family throws it on your property, you're the perpetrator. So it really is, the perpetrator can be either the landowner or somebody else throwing it on their land.
But inadvertently, if I owned a parcel of land and people littered, come driving along on the highway or the roadway, it goes onto my lot. I either have to clean it up twice a year, or I could become a perpetrator at the will of the police chief. Is that correct?
Yeah, every of the 20 towns and cities I looked at, everybody has a similar description.
So what's the penalty fee structure if you're an actual litterer or a graffiti artist and you're caught by the police? Is there any schedule for that?
It's, you're talking about the litter portion?
Litter and or graffiti.
Yeah, we're talking about a nominal fine. If the law is enforced, which the police have the discretion to not enforce it.
Right. And that's where the rub is. I understand. Yep. All right. So you're saying it could be either or. The perpetrator could be the person who throws the rubbish out the window, or it could be me for not picking it up. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the purpose of most of what I've read is to try and get people to take some responsibility for their own property and not to put litter on other people's property. And you know, it doesn't work, but at least every other city and town is trying to fix it.
Mr. Costello, do you have a follow-up?
No, all set. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, I have
Couple quick
Mr.
questions.
Arienti and then Mr. Delafield.
Okay, Ellen brought up a point regarding the perpetrator. If someone is caught spraying graffiti, spray painting, whether it be public or private, can't they be charged with a state law of destruction of public or private property, which is even more significant than the graffiti law that we would be putting? So that, you know, I think that's covered there. The other thing I'd like to bring up is the fact that it's political signs included here, that I'd like to see the political signs placed on public land be considered trash. When you drive down State Road and you see 25 signs on the side of the road on public land for a candidate or for an issue, that you know were in place, that we're given permission because it's town land to put them there, I think that they should be able to be removed without notice to the candidate or to the people who are running the issue as well.
Mr. Arienti, I think, and George, you can comment on this. I think that in Section 4 it says removal of litter from public property and private property, right? So it does include public land.
But it doesn't specifically state what Bill has said. It's silent in that area.
With political signs, and it doesn't include it. It says in the other bylaw about political signs that you can't put them on public land, but it doesn't say anything about they can be removed without notice, whereas if you considered them political signs on public land to be considered trash or rubbish or whatever, then they could be removed with this bylaw.
Yeah, this doesn't particularly address that issue.
Well, what I'm hearing throughout is that you should remove any aspect of political signage in your litter bylaw, and then go back to the bylaw on political signs or the rules and regulations, and then modify that so that they don't, because right now you're not going to get agreement from enough people because of that issue, and you want this to pass,
Yes.
right? So that's what I'm hearing from everybody. Mr. Delafield.
Yeah, I just wanted to give an example because I think that it's very relevant to this issue of private property and what's allowable and what isn't. There has been, as far as I know, ever since the last presidential election, at least one sign in somebody's yard that says, President Biden is not my president. And he's got a sign in his yard. Does he have a right to that sign? Will he have a right under this to that sign? Or what happens to somebody who clearly, and I say this because we're going to have a lot of people in town who are not going to be happy if they can't have that sign, which may be offensive to a lot of us, but to them was their right as a property owner to have a sign of that type. So how does this address that issue?
It's a very, very fair point, and this actually came up with a resident in Manamet, I believe, who has he's very active in his disdain for Mr. President Biden. And it actually, the town did, I think, Kevin, you probably have the history on this, but this went large, and he has freedom of speech that he is protected by, so that
is a sign I'm addressing.
Yeah. So again, we as a town could not tell anybody that they have to take that down. And I think that that's also going to become part of the problem. If I love President Biden, and I want him, or God help me, President Trump, and I want him to be, represented as part of my opinion, I'm allowed to put that on my lawn, and I shouldn't have a town telling me that I need to take that sign down in my support of that past president or the current one. They have rights. So I don't think, I think you're opening up a really big can of worms with the election signs.
All right, well, you just convinced me. We'll take that out when I go home
I think it's a
tonight.
really good idea, so, but Pompey, great points. And then I thought I had someone else. Did I see someone else? Okay, I'm going to speak to this. Oh, and then Mr. Cirque. We can't, sorry. I forgot. It's been so long. I forgot we had a motion on the table, Mr. Weber. I commend George for all of his effort. He's put in an awful lot of work on this, and it's really important. I think Mr. Golden's point is fair, that we do have a state statute, but I also think we have a problem here in Plymouth that we're not addressing litter or graffiti promptly and effectively, which has caused a lot of problems. And so the biggest issue that I see with this is that I think the real motive here is to get people to clean up the litter. And I've done a fair share of cleanups, and I don't know if I've posted some of them. I do a lot of cleanup on my street. I just did one in November. It was like 18 tires. Who's throwing their tires out? I don't know, but there were 18 of them, and they had rims. They were really heavy. So I think you're trying to get the town to address litter. Yes, the NIP election put a highlight on that. However, we're not currently doing it. So I don't necessarily think it's so much that we don't have a litter bylaw. We don't have the town on board with doing this. And so we have a DPW today that is responsible for assisting us in this area, whether it's graffiti or whether it's litter. Now, I think a litter bylaw, we can put it in place to drive that, but the language has to drive that. And so in order for that to happen, there needs to be accountability. There needs to be buy-in. And we absolutely can't go to the floor in the spring and put forward another bylaw that doesn't have that accountability. We have to get, I'm going to finish, and then I'm going to give you time. We have to be able to say, when we go forward, yes, the language on this bylaw is spot on. It makes sense. And what we've been doing is passing bylaws that are not fit for purpose. They're like, oh, well, it's better than nothing. I can't even tell you how many people have gone to the floor and said, it's better than nothing. I hate that comment. If it doesn't work and it's not correct, then wait and make it happen. That's my opinion on this. And I cannot, if it comes to the spring, pass something or vote to support something that I don't understand how much it's going to cost me. And that's a critical missing piece here. And that, you and I have talked about this, and it's one of the things I said, I'll work with you on this. You need to be able to sit down with the chief of police and say, okay, what can we do about litter? Knowing that people are throwing things out on the streets, and that's really where a lot of the litter is happening, on our highways, on our streets. So by putting a bylaw in place, unless we have some type of enforcement, and that's what Mr. Sierko was saying when he came here, this is going to be meaningless. And what person do you know throws litter out the window while they're driving down the street, whether it's a nip or a large, fifth of vodka, which is what I'm picking up on my street? What person do you know that's going to do that when a cop is sitting there watching? It's not going to happen. So we need to have a deeper dive into this and understand what can we put in place that's going to be workable. But then we're also taxing our DPW department with cleaning up graffiti and litter. And if we pass this and it says you have 2 days to clean it up, now you've got a time frame that's been passed as a bylaw on the town that department is now responsible to ensure that there is no litter on the streets or that somebody's party is cleaned up within 48 hours. So I can tell you right now that when and if we pass this, they will say, okay, sure, no problem. And now the DPW is going to come to us and say, well, looking at this bylaw, how many acres are we in Plymouth? How many miles of highway do we have, or streets?
Can I just interrupt? Because
And so, I'm going to finish. And so, we can't pass it unless we know how much it's going to cost us. It's going to be, I bet you, like 3 DPW resources, I would just estimate, and they all come with benefits. They may be union, so they're,
Can I interrupt there because you're
No,
making
I'm not
it-
going to
okay,
let you. I'm
all
going to
right.
finish. And then you can. I'm the chair. I have,
Okay,
this is my
okay,
time
all
to
right.
talk. And so there is resources that are going to have to be hired. So we need to sit down with the town manager and the DPW and say, okay, if we pass this, how many resources are you going to need? And then it becomes a budget item on this, in the spring town meeting, that you will have to have a budget item to, or it will have to go to the fall to pay for the resources to do this. And I can't, in good faith, knowing that every single one of my residents are screaming about the latest tax bill, vote for more resources, and I don't even know the cost. And I think that needs to be done before this goes before a town meeting for a vote. Now, Mr. McKay.
Okay. I vehemently disagree with you that there's any additional cost here, because the way this is written, right now, the Open Space Committee does 2 cleanups every year, and they do.
I did it with them in November. They didn't clean up every street. It's not,
All
there
right.
is no way this isn't going to cost money. There's no way. They don't do anything that we pass without it costing money. Go ahead.
The way this is written, there is no change between what we're doing today and after this passes, unless somebody wants to do something. Right now, we clean up the town twice a year, and it isn't good enough. But all this says is, basically, we're doing it. It requires that somebody do it, a designee like the Open Space Committee, do it twice a year. So if you continue doing what you're doing, this bylaw dovetails into what you're doing. And it would cost nothing additional unless you decide to do more. So they're 2 separate issues.
So what's the point of passing it, George, if nobody's going to use it and no one's going to do anything with it?
Well,
It's a waste of time.
it creates a foundation. Right now, there's no foundation to do anything related to litter. There is a foundation to do something related to graffiti, and that's what I was trying to point out, the process. because this establishes a process. You don't have to implement the process, but it establishes a process. So if you decide to do something, then you have a process.
But it's not a process because it doesn't have buy-in, and it doesn't have accountability, and it doesn't have the necessary costs associated with it. That, when I've gone before, and I've done a couple of citizens petitions, every department that I've talked to would always say, how much is this going to cost? Even the select board, Harry, we've talked about this with you. How much is this going to cost? With the fur, when they did the fur bylaw, when they did the pet store bylaw, all of them, they all talk about cost. And Derek Brindisi is going to look at this if it passes, and then they're going to go to the DPW, and now they're going to need a budget item. It absolutely is going to happen. No, Derek's not going to look at a bylaw that's in our city and say, well, we're not going to support that bylaw. We're just not going to do anything about it. I don't know any bylaw that's written saying, well, you could do something or you don't have to. That's bylaws aren't written like that.
Well, the graffiti bylaw is written like that.
Mr. Golden.
Madam Chair, I'd like to call the question.
Okay, so we're going to go to a vote. Not when we have a motion on the floor. So we're obligated by the...
Madam Chair, could I ask to restate the motion, please?
Mr. Weber, please restate the motion.
The motion was to accept the bylaw as written. And I didn't add this to the motion, but I'll just say, Mr. McKay has offered to remove section 4C and D over our rejection. So I still say, make a motion to approve the bylaw as amended by the maker of the motion. So I suggest that we make a motion to approve the motion with the petitioner's offered amendments to remove section 4C and D, and let the voters at town meeting decide its fate.
No, what I agreed to was removing D. I still think that a person should be responsible for cleaning up their own yard. That's an opinion. So I want to leave that portion in, but I will accept a motion to eliminate D.
Well, I didn't make that motion. I made that motion as stated, so that's the motion.
So there were some town meeting members that wanted to speak on this that were not chairs. Since Mr. Golden has called the question, then apparently, according to Robert's Rules of Order, we need to go to the vote.
No, we need to go to Mr. Golden's vote.
We need to vote on.
We need to go to Mr. Golden's vote, not the main motion.
We can deny his motion.
I'm sorry, Pumpy, I didn't hear you.
I said we have to vote on Mr. Golden's motion and not on the motion as stated.
Okay, thank you for clarity. Okay, so we're going to go to Mr. Golden's motion.
I have a question.
Mr.
Point of order.
I did get a second, didn't I?
There's been no second on it, so until there's a second, the motion, as I understand,
Okay,
is to
Mr.
close
Brewster
discussion. That is the motion to close discussion.
I'll second the close to the discussion.
Ask a point of order question.
Pat has a point of order.
Is there any process where we can hold up the motion to allow the non-COPC speakers to speak?
If we vote Mr. Golden's point, if we vote it down, then I think we can.
Yes, we can
We have
vote
to
down
go
the
back to
motion.
discussion. Yes.
Okay.
So we
Thank
vote
you.
it down, we can go back to discussion, and then Mr. Cirque and others can speak on this.
All right.
All right, so we're going to go to the vote. Precinct 1,
To allow other town meeting members to speak, I vote no.
Precinct 2,
No.
Precinct 3,
No.
Precinct 4,
No.
Precinct 5, but not here, Precinct 6,
No.
Precinct 7,
Yes.
Precinct 8,
Abstain.
Precinct 9, I say no. Precinct 10,
Precinct 10, no.
Precinct 11,
Yes.
Precinct 12,
No.
Precinct 13,
No.
Precinct 14. Okay, not here. Precinct 15,
Yes.
Precinct 16,
No.
Precinct 17,
No.
Precinct 18.
Abstain.
Very good. Okay, it doesn't carry, so we're going to go to discussion, and Mr. Cirque has the podium.
Thank you, Ms. Helms. Richard Cirque, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. As you all know, and as Mr. McKay reminded us, at the fall town meeting, a proposed amendment to Chapter 137 of the town bylaws to remove nuisances from public and private property failed to win approval, primarily because town meeting was afraid that if the nuisance was on private property, Hatfield versus McCoy disputes between neighbors would ensue. I believe the town can and should take a narrower approach to the problem by limiting its application to public property only. This would not require a new bylaw. It would merely constitute a more focused application of the existing bylaw, Chapter 177 on graffiti and litter. I have a request for removal by town of graffiti on public property form, and all it asks you to do is to state the location of the graffiti, submit it with a photo, and give your contact information. And then the DPW will remove it. Now, it doesn't specifically address the issue of graffiti on public, of litter on public property, but I've got to assume that if you submitted the same information for graffiti, it would not be ignored by the, for litter, it would not be ignored by the DPW. So I just don't, I think we need a more focused application of the bylaws that are on the books before we talk about amending them after what we learned at the fall town meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Cirque. Any questions or comments? Any other discussion?
Could I get the slide back up, my slideshow, because there's a slide in there that I didn't show the last slide.
We have
There is a process on the town website to do exactly what Richard Cirque said to do. And you go on the main menu, and over in the right-hand side, it says Report a Concern. Takes you into a Report a Concern page, which has an item on it underlined where you can go into a program called Click Fix. And in that Click Fix, you have a drop-down menu, and in that drop-down menu, there's a line item that says graffiti. And in that drop-down menu, when you push the graffiti button, it takes you to a page that says, where is the item you want to report? And you put the address in. It says, what does it look like? And you put that photo in. And so you get that same information that Richard Cirque is suggesting by his form electronically on the town website. And this works. You can see I put the water, this is what I did when I wanted to get the graffiti taken out of the water bond. I went into the town website, dropped down the menu, put in graffiti, took a picture of the water bond with the graffiti on it. It went to the town, and the town got it fixed. Right now, there's no drop-down menu that addresses litter because we have no reference. So all I'm suggesting is that we make a reference similar to what graffiti has so we can address that issue. And I agree with what Mr. Cirque said related to the nuisance issue. I think it was an overreach. It talked about rodents in your backyard. I have a big hill in my backyard that I've never been down, and periodically we hear ducks back there because water gets in the area. There are certainly rodents like squirrels running all around my area. And so I agree with exactly what he said in terms of let's not complicate the issues and let's not confuse a graffiti and litter bylaw with a nuisance bylaw.
Okay, we're going to go to a vote. So precinct 1.
No.
The motion again? Okay, Mr. Weber, you need to repeat the motion again.
It's,
Which of the items, A, B, C, D?
my motion has been complicated by the proponent of the bylaw willing to amend it, but he didn't make a motion to amend it. If that's acceptable by the parliamentarian, I will amend my original motion to say, pass this bylaw with the amendments that the proponent of the bylaw has suggested that he will remove, and then bring it to town meeting, because Precinct 8 has asked us to do that.
Mr. Weber, I just want to make sure your wording, you're saying pass, do you mean
Vote yes.
support?
Vote yes for this.
But you're saying that this committee should support this?
Yes.
Because we can't pass it?
We should bring it to town meeting.
Yeah, okay.
If there's any question about it, we have to vote on the amended. If there is no question on it, I would think we could do the vote itself with the amendment in it. But I think that our chairperson should ask if there is any problem with voting on it as amended, because that in itself would take another vote if there is an objection.
Debate
Can
on
I
the
bring
floor.
up a
1
point of order
second.
here?
Yes, please.
I appreciate all the input that I'm hearing literally on either side of me, but we do have a parliamentarian, so I just want to make sure that we abide by at least that. I mean, I get it, but.
All right, so fair point. So we need to take a vote.
Madam Chair, can
Say
I?
it, please.
Madam Chair,
Please.
I
ahead.
would ask that you ask if there are any objection to the vote as amended. If there is no objection verbally, then I don't think we have to vote on it.
I love that. Okay. So is there any objection to voting on the motion?
Voting on the motion as amended.
As long as I understand what the amendments are.
Mr. McKay, what are you?
We're going to take out 4D in the definition of graffiti.
And 4D, just to clarify, is?
Election and event litter defined as placing signs on public property related to elections or other signage like lost animals.
Any objections to the Yes, Ms. Pratt. You're muted, Ms. Pratt. Please start again.
Just for clarification, Mr. McKay, 4C applies to, please?
I think you said 4D, right?
4D?
4C, 4C.
4D
C is
is
in Charlie.
election and event litter.
I'm sorry?
It's event and election litter will be stricken from the bylaw.
So 4C and 4D?
No, 4D.
It's only 4D.
Thank you.
Mr. McKay, did you say you were taking out the definition of litter?
No, I said I was deleting 4D, which is election and event litter.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
No, they're two separate issues.
Again, I just think we can continue to go through this, but I just think this language is not ready.
Well, the other thing is, what we could do is, I'll take out that 4D, but the rest of it is relatively straightforward by the process of what we've done, and I think that.
Well, for 1B, it's unauthorized placement, usually to advertise or promote people, events, ideas, stickers. So that, again, is the conflict that we were talking about before that impacts the election signs placement. It's not a litter problem, right?
No, if you look at these signs here, that shows what fly posting is. It's something attached to a building, not a standalone.
I'm going to continue to say the language in here is not ready. You'd need to insert a definition of fly posting in order, if this is a bylaw. Like
There is a definition here.
Where?
Any authorized placements, right there.
No, but so
1B.
any authorized placements to advertise or promote people, events, ideas, or stickers with stickers, signs, or posters, and the purpose of this bylaw is considered a subset of, so it's still saying posters and signs. It doesn't say attached to a street sign. It needs a lot more work. It's not ready. So there's a lot.
You can.
And then
Well, why don't you just postpone a vote?
So I'm going to go back to questionings, Ms. Pratt, and then Mr. Costello.
So I think we all agree in principle that we need we need a litter bylaw that has some teeth to it. We're 18 precinct chairs and we're spending an hour going through this issue with, a multitude of questions. And so, George, I applaud you for all your hard work. I think that we definitely shouldn't, drop the ball here, but I don't think this is ready for prime time, and I don't think this is ready to be able to present to town meeting. So when the vote comes, unfortunately, I can't support this at this point because I think it's a bit premature.
Mr. Costello.
I'm actually probably of the same mind. But just quickly, procedurally, if we have no problem with the amendments by the article introducer, are we now sponsoring this article? When we go to town meeting in the spring, is Committee of Precinct Chairs name going to be attached to this bylaw?
No, Precinct 8 voted on this, and it would be Precinct 8 bringing this forward.
Okay, so as long as it's not going to be Committee of Precinct Chairs. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Golden.
I do, it's an interesting question because what they voted on is what's before us. So George is asking for our support of what a different committee is sponsoring. So if we were to vote for this and Precinct 8 disagreed with us, they could withdraw their support for the article, and we would either need to sponsor it or it would fall off the warrant, I would think.
Mr. Brewster.
I would ask the motion maker to rescind his motion so that maybe Mr. McKay could bring it back with the edits and massage it a little more.
Mr. Weber. Are you interested in doing that? Were you listening?
I'm asking you to rescind your motion so that Mr. McKay can come back.
Well, it was my understanding that there's a time frame that this has to happen. So if we do that, what you're saying, Mr. Brewster, is this thing will not see the light of town meeting at this time.
No.
Is that what you're looking to do? I mean, is that a backdoor approach to what you're trying to?
No, all I'm trying to do is Mr. McKay even said, could you delay the vote? And all I'm trying to do is give Mr. McKay some more time.
I don't know that he has that for the warrant. That's all I'm saying.
No, we do.
You do?
It's February.
Are we having
Isn't
another
it?
We have until February 2nd, right?
Second, so we wouldn't have a COPC meeting between now
That's
and
what
then,
I'm saying.
so.
There's no more meetings.
But you could take this feedback, and you could correct your bylaw, and you could go back. You do not need COPC to approve this.
That's correct.
And so you're still have absolute empowerment to
Right,
go forward.
and there will be other changes, I suspect, that'll be made, because town council has reviewed it on a preliminary basis before it was approved.
This was my other, they didn't approve it, they reviewed it. They did not approve it.
That's right.
So this has
Town
not even
council
been
did-
through, we're being asked to vote on something that has not been through one, and this is what I was saying before, there's been no discussions with town management, with DPW, or with the chief of police, and we're being asked to vote on that, and that's not right. We have not received any of their feedback. It's really important. And so you can go back with this feedback that you've gotten and correct the language, because the goal here is for you to get it passed, right, at spring town meeting. But there's a lot of us that are not going to vote for it at town meeting based on the way it's written now. So take the opportunity to take the feedback, go back and have Precinct 8 vote on it again with the new language. You don't need our vote.
Point of order.
But there's a
Point-
motion on the floor that Mr. Weber has asked, but I asked for objections on the language, and I am objecting because the posters in 1B.
Point of order. I believe we have enough to take a vote, and I would recommend that we take a vote.
Okay, we'll take a vote. Precinct 1,
No.
Precinct 2,
No.
Precinct 3,
Yes.
Precinct 4,
No.
Precinct 5, Precinct 6,
No.
Precinct 7,
No.
Precinct 8. You can vote for this.
I'm going to abstain.
Aw, you're such a good man, George. Precinct 9, George, I've told you I'd work with you on this. I can't vote for it. I can't vote for this. Yeah, so, no. Precinct 10,
Precinct 10, no.
Precinct 11,
Precinct 11, no.
Precinct 12,
No.
Precinct 13,
No.
Precinct 14,
Absent.
Precinct 15,
No?
Precinct 16,
No.
Precinct 17,
No.
Precinct 18.
No.
The motion does not carry. Let's move on. Thank you, George, for your
Thank you,
time.
George.
Permit wastewater discharge.
We have a shared objective.
Mr. LaFeary. Yes. You have the floor. Yep, go right, you can stand, you can sit there, or you can go to the podium, it's up to you, whatever you're comfortable with.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent.
Go right
Thank you.
ahead.
Okay, so a constituent in my precinct earlier this month had handed me this sheet that I had sent out regarding the town of Plymouth submitting a permit request with the state to discharge an large increase of gallons from the wastewater treatment plant. And their concern was, has this been shared around town? And I guess the proposal was presented to the select board back in the early part of December, and only one public meeting was held. So I didn't know if anyone here knew more about this permit and where it stands and where it's going.
Mr. Canty, do you have any insight that you'd be able to share with us? Mr. Canty's here from the Select Board, and we also have Mr. Harry Helms, so we have some good support here.
Thank you. So there was a presentation given about the proposal, the reasons for it, and the thought process behind it. My understanding from the last time we discussed about it was that further outreach was going to be done to inform and solicit feedback from people around the area, and that process is just starting, but that is my understanding of the next steps. But there are the thinking behind it, the reasoning behind it. There was problems with the current discharge under, I believe, both state and federal regulations. So it wasn't just an arbitrary decision to do this.
Thank you, Mr. Canty. Mr. Tavares?
Hopefully you can answer that. I started to watch this section of the meeting and unfortunately had something else I had to go to, but is there a time frame on when the permit needs to be issued by, or, I mean, obviously they're going to try and keep the outreach within whatever that is, but is this something that needs to happen in the next 6 months, or is this coming at us quickly as far as getting public feedback? Okay.
I don't think it's super. I think they want to do it with all deliberate speed, but not at the expense of trying to talk to people about it. So I think near future, I don't recall a date certain being identified.
Very good. I know that there was several people that had questions on this from the residents. Some of them were joining us. They may be online. So hopefully that has provided at least a little bit of guidance on what we're doing here while we get more information as it comes forward. Any questions or comments on this?
Just as a follow-up, I think that it would behoove the COPC, I see there's a lot of residents on the Zoom tonight, and I know some of them called me just before this meeting. I think if we can reach out to getting, I think it was the DPW director was involved with this, and as well as there was a consulting firm, I think, that was also brought in. I don't know what we might be able to do to maybe bring this back up in February, but at least bringing those people in, just to give, maybe it could be perhaps part of that outreach that the vice chair of the select board was talking about, that we might be able to facilitate or help facilitate, which would also probably cover Mr. Lynch's statements about having to have outreach.
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, I can definitely organize that for our February session. That's not a problem at all.
And I would suggest, giving the DPW director advance notice so that he can loop in any, because obviously there are division heads within DPW that may be of further assistance. But if that's something you would like to have more information on, I'm sure that could be arranged with advance notice.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Mr. Canty. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Carmen. Appreciate you. All right, we're moving on. You still have the floor because you're now going to give a town meeting handbook update. You can move to your seat.
Thanks again. So we had last Thursday, the 11th, rather, we had our kickoff meeting for the town handbook meeting, revision update, what have you. And that was meeting number 1. We briefly went over the current town meeting handbook that was issued back in 2012. We sat down with a number of people in this room to develop a plan, and I will be posting the meeting minutes on the town website, and I have copies here if anyone wants to stop by afterwards. We have a draft cleanup target date for March 7. And our next meeting will be on February 8th.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Heard very good things about that meeting. Lots was done. Very, very impressive. Now we're going to move to Mr. Costello. Could you provide us a legislative oversight update? Thank you, Carmen.
Yes, as far as the Legislative Oversight Committee, there's no real news since our last meeting. other than to tell you our meeting on January 22nd, this upcoming Monday evening, will be in the rope walk room. And once we get some information from that meeting, I'll have a report at our next COPC meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Costello, could you give me a little bit more detail on how many times you've actually been able to meet since the committee was formed?
Yeah, we have 3 meetings prior to a cancellation on December 18th due to inclement weather. We had 3 meetings prior to that date. And then our last COPC meeting on the 8th of this month was supposed to be a Legislative Oversight Committee meeting as well. I canceled that in lieu of our meeting here. So the 2 meetings over the Christmas and New Year's holiday we missed. So we're back on track for Monday night, and that'll be our 4th meeting.
Okay. So during those meetings, could you provide some guidance as to where you're at with putting a foundation or some type of governance around how you're going to be approaching legislative oversight? Have you, do you understand like how you're going to be doing it, what you're focusing on, how many articles there are, any type of, in those meetings, what was accomplished?
Yeah, the first 3 meetings were dedicated solely to crafting a document that would work with the town IT department, would work with our group, so that we could populate that document with any and all articles that are passed at any town meeting that we've had in the past and in our current town meetings. An easy to read document, an easy to monitor document, and we feel we have that now. So this meeting coming up Monday night is going to really sort of be a test case where we start to populate that that document. So to answer your question, the first 3 meetings were solely to put together a foundation as to how we're going to hope to monitor articles going forward. We seem to have done that, and now we're going to start the business of tracking articles.
Okay, so while you were working on that formation of that document, was there, because I know you've got approximately 15 people in your committee, so do you have other people working on doing some type of an audit or pulling in like some type of a consensus of which articles you should focus on, or how are you managing your group of 15? Because that seems like it's been about 6 months, so I'm just kind of trying to understand, what we could expect for progress that we'd be able to report back to our residents.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It was interesting once everyone started to look at the current town meeting that we had. There's several, dozens and dozens of legislative articles that are taken care of at every meeting. A lot of them are housekeeping, and they'll fall off very quickly, but there's quite a bit of information. So yes, we have discussed how we're going to treat all new articles in front of us, and we've also started to put together a process of how we're going to reach back and monitor long term articles that have sort of been lingering. So we're trying to do all 3 phases at one time, but the document was the most important thing, to get a document that we could use, the town website could use, and it would be easily any townsperson, any town meeting member could access this document and know in real time where every article is. And I think we've achieved that. We'll know better on Monday night, but I think we're in good shape.
Very good. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Costello. Charter Review Committee, Mr. Golden, would you be able to provide us an update?
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. The Charter Review Committee is very nearly finished with Chapter 2. We have only 3 sections remaining to review. We're currently going to push those off because there are a number of members who wanted to be present for some of those discussions who will not be present at our next meeting. So our next meeting will start on Chapter 3, and we'll revisit the remaining sections of Chapter 2 at a later date. We are increasing the number of meetings that we have so that we can make a stronger headway as we go through the charter. Our next meeting is scheduled for this Tuesday, January 23rd. It will be Zoom only. The agenda has been posted and the link is on the agenda.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Golden? Pat Elderman will now approve our minutes.
There was a last-minute request to change the minutes. I'm not sure if everybody got that, but apparently there was somebody in the audience that I missed because I came in late. So Precinct 1 had Mr. Rob Quick in the audience. He was not voting. He was observing for Precinct 1. And with that...
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
And we have a second by Mr. All right, then I will call. Any discussion? All right. Precinct 1.
Abstain.
Precinct 2.
Yes.
Precinct 3.
Abstain.
Precinct 4.
Yes.
Precinct 5. Precinct 7.
Yes.
Hold on, wait a minute. You missed precinct 6.
Precinct 6.
Precinct 6, approve.
Precinct 7.
Yes.
Precinct 8.
Yes.
Precinct 9.
Abstain.
Precinct 10.
Precinct 10, yes.
Precinct 11.
Precinct 11, yes.
Precinct 12, yes. Precinct 13.
Precinct 13, yes.
Precinct 14, not present. Precinct 15.
Yes.
Precinct 16.
Approve?
Precinct 17.
Yes.
And Precinct 18.
Yes, approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Public comment. Mr. Helm, welcome.
Well, you got to public comment a little bit quicker than I thought you would after the earlier stuff.
We pride ourselves on efficiency here at the COPC.
And the residents, thank you. So, good evening, members of the Committee of Precinct Chairs. My name is Harry Helm. I live in Precinct 6, and tonight I am here as a resident. The 2025 combined town and school budget you are all going to receive for consideration currently represents a 6.9% increase in taxes. This increase does not reflect what the school department will eventually ask for to fill the important contract goals for our teachers from upcoming contract negotiations. The school administration is currently unable to tell us what this amount will be, but it will likely add several millions of dollars and raise the increase percentage well beyond 7%. About 3.5 years ago, I addressed the COPC as Vice Chair of the Advisory and Finance Committee. I made a recommendation that now, as a resident, I'm going to renew. You, the CPC, is permitted to create your own budget review subcommittee to review the town budget top to bottom, line by line, and to do the same thing with the school budget. Town meeting has final control of the budget and therein final responsibility. So the time is now. As a resident, I ask you to do what you are allowed to do to properly inform and advise town meeting on the budget. Per Chapter 2-3-4 of the current town charter, you, the CPC, is authorized to create subcommittees to address and advise on any matters you deem appropriate. Please, create this budget review subcommittee now. Roll up your sleeves and examine and advise town meeting on the town and school budgets. Once again, the time is now. Thank you for listening and hopefully in advance for your attention to this request. Thank you.
We normally don't take questions on public comment, but I am, since Mr. Helm is a resident and also select board member, I'm going to open it up to see if anyone has any comments on what he shared. Yes, Mr. Brewster.
I would ask the chair to put this on the agenda for the next meeting to look at creating that subcommittee.
We'll take that under advisement. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Hutchinson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would support Rusling's sentiment in this regard.
Okay, very good. All right, any other public comment? Is there anyone online that would like to speak, whether you are a town meeting member or a resident? No, I don't see any.
Madam Chair?
If you did, you would go to the bottom of your screen. There's a button that asks to raise your hand, and then we would be able to call on you. Mr. Hutchinson has a follow-up, and I'll give the residents online just a few more minutes. Go right ahead, please.
Many of the folks online are from Precinct 17 and are on the call here in support of comments that I'm going to make later in new business. So if you could accommodate questions from them then, I suppose it might make more sense. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure what you're going to talk about, but so let me, I'll hold my decision on that. Okay, I don't see any questions online for public comment, so I'm going to move right to new business. Mr. Hutchinson.
Could I interject a point of order? It says old business and new business. Can we get rid of the old business right away?
Does anyone have any old business?
I do.
Okay, so you're basically, as my son would say, cutting, but fine. So we will go to old business first.
I think I have a simple and quick question.
We'll go to old business first, and so it'll be Mr. McKay, and then I think Mr. Tavares has a comment. Anyone else? And Mr. Weber. Go right ahead, please, Mr. McKay.
Okay, 2 meetings ago, following town meeting, we had a discussion here with Mr. Trifletti about the process of cutting off town debate at town meeting before the opposing people could give their opinion. And you had asked us as precinct chairs to go back to our precincts and poll the precinct members on what they thought of that idea. And I did it, and I expected to talk about that at the previous meeting, but it was not discussed.
So what would you like to say about your Precinct 8 polling that you did, Mr. McKay?
Well, we just took a vote, and I have the response from each of the 9 people.
What did they say, Mr. McKay?
But I did this in hopes that everybody else would do the same thing as you had asked them to do. So I don't know what the purpose of you. I can give you the results, of the 9 town meeting members that I asked what they thought, but I expected we would have this kind of report from every precinct chair.
Right, so we're giving them time to do that. And so we can certainly pick this back up before town meeting, which is in the spring, to cover that off. I know Ms. Adelman has already talked to her caucus, or her precinct. So what is your vote that you got for feedback, Mr. McKay?
I got 5 yeses, 3 noes, and 1 abstain.
And yet, what was the question?
Whether we should do something to change the format rather than stick with the current rules that allowed the town meeting members to cut off debate what these people thought was prematurely without giving the opposing side a chance to speak.
Not the opposing side, but I think the question was supposed to be whether or not we allow residents to talk.
These were business owners that had sent letters in advance to the moderator.
Right.
And he agreed that they could speak. And they were next to speak, and the debate was cut off.
Right. So we'll put that on the February session, Mr. McKay, and we'll pick it up there.
Catherine?
Ms. Adelman?
I believe it has to be changed by a town article. So we if we want to change it, it has to be before, what's the deadline?
February 2nd.
Which isn't going to happen before our next committee meeting.
Right, and we don't have, we can pick it up as a discussion point, and we can do maybe an article for the fall, but we didn't get enough participation from chairs doing caucuses or reaching out to their members, and then we did have many that reached out, and they didn't want to change it.
Okay.
Point of order, Catherine?
Yes, Mr. Golden.
This might be a moot point. I think that there are a number of us on the Charter Review Committee who believe that following the rules established by a prior town meeting is, we are not legally bound to do that, because the feeling is that one town meeting can't bind another town meeting. So it might be worth you or someone else, and I'm happy to take this on, reaching out to the town's internal town council to ask them whether or not the rules of a previous town meeting apply to future town meetings.
Mr. Golden, I don't, where was that coming from? Because it wasn't about that. It was the moderator made the decision, and it was in.
Right, but it's a rule established by town meeting?
Through town meeting times.
No, it was established in a 2008 town meeting. I asked for it from Steve Trevoletti.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mr. Golden, if you want to provide some, if you have the time to go talk to town council on it to prepare,
I can.
and we'll put it on the agenda
Sure.
item for next meeting. But we don't have the time to put an article forward for the spring. All right. Are we done with old business? Did I get everybody? Oh, Mr. Weber, I'm sorry. And
Thank you, Dale Weber, Precinct 3. Just a little public service announcement to the Committee of Precinct Chairs and anyone watching virtually to stay tuned for some public meetings that are going to be set up to discuss the Precinct 3 traffic downtown North Plymouth corridor study. GPI has got a very good presentation coming forward with some recommendations, not all. This is an ongoing process, but stay tuned. I was hoping to have that before the end of this month, but it looks like it will carry on into February at some point. But I'll keep everyone posted, and this is going to be at one of the high schools in the auditorium for the benefit of a PowerPoint presentation on a big screen so that everybody can see it, and hopefully with a breakout meeting into the cafeteria where there'll be light refreshments and breakout groups to answer questions of people in each precinct that is affected in the traffic study.
Very good, Mr. Weber. And if you want, when you get that date, let me know, send it to me, and I'll send it out to all town meeting members. And then a lot of people post them on social media, too, because I think that's a really important item. Okay. Mr. Tavares.
So this is kind of new business, maybe a little bit of old. Maybe I'm a good transition from old business to new business. I'm not sure. So after the kind of in light of the last couple days and with information going around, I was a little concerned about there was certain emails that were getting different groupings of town meeting members on them, and so I think and I voiced my concern to another COPC member, Mr. Golden, and he sent over to me an interesting document that the Charter Review Committee put together, kind of like a guideline. He says rules, but I'd like it to be more of a guideline. But I was thinking about looking at something like this for the COPC. It's just kind of guidelines as to, be careful when discussing, town business with, in public forums, included but not limited to social media, other public meetings. But I was going to put something together, and I don't know that I'll have it ready for, well, it depends on what our next meeting is. But it would just be interesting for us to maybe just take a look at, or just to keep in the back of our mind. And who knows, maybe even it makes it into the town meeting handbook that we're working on as well. But part of that also includes the way the Charter Review Committee handles information distributed. It's still, I know I spoke about it last time, it's still getting a little bit chaotic, and hopefully when we have an admin, that'll settle that down. Because, we do post meetings 48 hours in advance. Yes, the agenda can change a little bit, but receiving, I think it's unfair to 18 members in total here to receive documents, less than 24 hours, and is rough, just to give them that ample courtesy and time to actually review documents, I think is needed. I know some of us might not be able to be in front of a computer most of the day, or something else. So I'm going to put something together just to kind of give like a guideline, just to keep in our back pocket or back of our minds, and hopefully you guys can take a look at it. I don't think it needs to be anything that is voted on unless anybody feels that way.
Good. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, I would say there's none. Let's move on to new business. And I had Mr. Hutchinson, and I had someone else. Yes, Mr. Brewster.
So I'm on?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I have 3 items of new business to bring to the table for the COPC. First is an overview of my constituents' response to Article 16C, and I'll speak to that in 2 or 3 minutes. But the second article that I wanted to bring to the table is Article 20, which is a select board request for 3 liquor licenses in 16 and 17. And the chairman of Precinct 16 is also here, and I'm speaking for both of us at this point. And likewise, also for both 16, 17, and probably Precinct 12, Precinct 15, and others that are impacted, a constituent has actually requested an inquiry into the construction of a stoplight at the intersection of Long Pond Road, Halfway Pond Road, and Bloody Pond Road. And it's a request for a project that has stalled. So the inquiry would have to do with how we take that forward. And I would like to add longer comments about all 3 of these, and especially in the 16C, and I'll do that in a second. But I would like all 3 of those articles to be topics for the COPC.
Yeah, so we are, you all received the draft warrant that I sent out for the annual. And so we will be starting those discussions with speakers. We already had the solar bylaw discussed in the last session. So absolutely, we're going to go through all of those. So, and I know those are hot buttons.
Yes. Sometimes we get to discussions of greater length than others. That's why I wanted to have some time to actually have our Precinct 17 constituents make comments if they felt they needed to.
So when we have our presentation forum, just to remind everybody, and there's a lot of residents on the line, so what we always do is I get the person that has put the article forward to come before us and present it. We also ask anyone that has issue with it so that we, as a COPC, can then have both perspectives. So that is fine. I see a hand up. So we will be going through that, and those will be agenda items for the presentation forum. I'm not prepared to I don't have that set up, obviously, for tonight, but I don't have presenters for those articles, but we will be getting those done.
Well, right. And what I wanted to do, though, is can I take a couple of minutes to just to introduce this as a topic? No more than 5 minutes?
I think what we would want to do, see, I hate that there's so many residents on that want to speak to this. Just give me a minute. Looking to present the article, Mr. Hutchinson?
I was going to give an overview of the ask. The article is presented by the CPC. So you would ask Mr. Cohan to come in and speak to the article. The article itself is for $4 million, which is a large amount. And I was going to describe the ask. I was just going to describe what the 80 or so residents who came to our caucus, and Mr. Canty was there, he visits us frequently, what those residents said and what their concerns are, and then specifically what the precinct's concerns are.
Right. I think in fairness to Mr. Cohan, though, and the CPC, the way that we need to handle this is that he comes before us and he formally presents what the article is doing. And then we would then, obviously, as we always do, open it up to chairs to ask questions and comments. And then we typically would have residents speak in public comment. I think that's the way to go here, because we need to be able to give fairness to the person that's presenting the article without hearing opposition first before we hear what the actual presenter would like to do. That's the way I'd like to handle that. So I'm going to put that on the agenda for our next session, and we'll have the CPC come forward and talk about those articles. The other obstacle that we have is that a lot of the detailed background information that we typically get as town meeting members hasn't been shared. So there's backup documentation that has not been, people are not as informed on it.
Right.
I'd like to give them the opportunity to be informed.
I agree, and it would be a large packet, actually. So
right. So we need to give town meeting members and specifically chairs an opportunity to dig into this. And then the presenter comes, they will present on the article, and then we'll open it up to questions and debate. Mr. Delafield.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on one of the other ones, it's not an article. So the traffic light at Halfway Pond, Long Pond Road is a subject that has been going on for 5 or 6 years. And I think it's something that we need, maybe with the help of our committee, to find out why there hasn't been action when that light was authorized to go or was planned to be done by the Makepeace people 5 years ago, and we still don't have it. It's a dangerous intersection, and somehow we have to, I hope this group will try and find out a reason why it hasn't happened and what we do to make it happen, because our constituents are sick and tired of a dangerous situation at that corner.
That's a fair comment. So, Mr. Delafield, just refresh my memory, because we vote on so many articles. Was this an article that we passed for this light, or was this a...
No, this was part of the agreement with the Makepeace Red Brook group, where they would pay for it.
Right.
It isn't even a town payment. It's a payment, and we can't get it done.
Right. So I don't know if you have a spokesperson for this group, but the way that we typically approach these things, has anyone gone to the steering committee in your group, or to specifically the town manager to find out why it stalled?
I have.
Okay.
Many times.
Okay.
So the way my assessment of the problem is that we don't have a process for bubbling up the issue and resolving the project management pieces of it. And I think that it is a town manager problem.
It is.
And I think that I need help from a select board member.
Well, I have this wonderful opportunity for you, Mr. Hutchinson. You have two right here. Because this is not on our agenda. We are introducing it as a new item, but I will also say that we're subject to the current charter. So this is outside the scope of the COPC. So I would say for that specific item, you should be working with your select board members and the town manager, Mr. Brindisi, to try to get some support. If you're not getting anywhere with Mr. Brindisi, then I think I'd have to defer to Mr. Helm and Mr. Canty. But if there's no, we don't have an article, and it's not a bylaw, so it's not something that the COPC can address.
Okay.
Until Mr. Golden changes that for us.
Well, I'll
Yes.
talk to Mr. Golden about it, too.
Ms. Adelman?
I actually met with the town manager and two of my town meeting members to discuss this, and he said the DPW would be making a report before the select board, and that was supposed to be back in early December, but from what I understand, the property owners, they're having a problem with the property owners giving a right-of-way for the construction. But it's supposed to be reported to the select board soon.
Okay, so Mr. Canty, is this something you're aware of, Mr. Helm? You are, okay. Since we have, just so that people at home know, we have how many residents online? We have about 20 people. We had. Yeah, we have 15 residents online. I think it's important for us to at least be able to provide them some assistance.
I would suggest, since you had that other item, you're going to ask the DPW director to come in, that perhaps in that request, if you also were to lump this in and be like, Mr. Coyle, we'd like to talk about these two specific things. Could you come prepared to give responses to these two specific things? And if you did it at the same time as the 16C Redbrook item was on your agenda, and you had Redbrook here, an AD Makepeace, you may have all the people in the room that you would need to get an answer.
Okay, very good. Everybody happy? Mr. Brewster, and then Mr. Costello, and then Ms. Pratt.
Yes, I'd like the committee precinct chairs to know that Precinct 15 and Precinct 16 is going to have a joint caucus on the 29th at 6 p.m. at the Plymouth South Middle School Auditorium, talking about the traffic study that the Pine Hills is going to do on Beaver Dam and Clark Road. This is an issue that is beyond 15 and 16. It has to do with the whole town. There's been a bunch of accidents and even a death on this road. The Pine Hills LLC is paying for this, supposed to do it. It's in process. We're going to have somebody from Pine Hills LLC. We should have somebody from the planning board and the DPW, all to discuss this. It's more of a presentation on this, but there will be public comment. So 29th at 6 p.m.
Excuse me, wrestling what intersection?
It's Beaver Dam and Clark Road and all of the Pine Hills entrances.
It basically goes from Route 3 to about Old Sandwich Road, right? It's in that entire section.
Mr. Costello.
Yes, quickly, new business. Excuse me. Can we get a statement from the town as to why Precinct 11, the voting site at the Plymouth Airport, has been changed now, and it now joins Precinct 10 at the Federal Furnace School? Is that building that they were using, is there something up with that building? And then secondly, it came up earlier, Mr. Ariante, he had just had a throwaway comment that the Symes House was off limits. Is there any update on the Symes House? Is that vacant? Is that being used? What's the status of the Symes House?
Mr. Canty.
Thank you. So the former polling location of Precinct 11 was in what was charitably referred to as the old conference room at the airport, which was reported to have lingering odors of mildew and aviation fuel, which made it very unpleasant to spend 14 hours in as poll workers. So there was a health and safety reason for moving that polling location to Federal Furnace. So that's that. And then the Symes House is very affordable housing units are occupied. The rest of the structure is currently unoccupied. We are interested in discharging ownership in one or more forms of that building. So if you know anyone that wants a plantation-style structure in Manomet and is willing to take care of it instead of us, we're interested. But so far, no takers.
Clarity, are you looking for someone to purchase the building or manage the building?
I will answer for myself. I am looking for someone to remove the approximately $100,000 a year we're spending on upkeep and maintenance and heating of it from the town. And if that were to happen, I don't care what else happens with it. They could give us $1 a year. They could give us $1 for 100 years if they're going to keep it up and pay the maintenance and heating and all that. I wish them well. But that's what it's doing right now, is just digging deeper and deeper into the pockets. But there are affordable housing units upstairs, which are providing a service to those folks. But the rest of it is currently doing nothing.
Thank you for that update. Ms. Pratt.
I withdraw my my statement based on the fact that we passed the topic in the agenda. So thank you.
I apologize for that, Ms. Pratt. Okay, so now I've got some new business. As we always do, we're prepping for Springtown meeting. I need everybody to get your caucus schedules finalized for Springtown meeting. And I need to be very clear on this because I've had conversations with the new chair of Advisory and Finance. It is COPC's responsibility to put that schedule together, which means, and this was the way it was before, and then Mr. Canty, he's always done it. It's been great. So I need every one of you to send me your schedule, where you're meeting, if you're having a hybrid, the date and the time. I'm going to put together a consolidated list. I'll share it with Advisory and Finance, and then they are going to assign resources, and they'll be reaching out to you. All right? So it's been, in the last, I don't know why, but in the last year and a half, it's been really confusing, where sometimes I get notifications from the chairs, and sometimes I don't. And they're expecting it to come from me. So it's really critical. Send it to me. I'll put it in a spreadsheet. I'll send it out to everybody. And then we like to provide it to social media because it's another way for us to get that out to the residents so they know when their caucuses are. So please start working on that and get me your caucus dates as soon as you have them sorted. All right? That is the only business that I had, except determining when our next meeting's going to be. We have the second Monday, and that would be 2/12 and 2/15. I love my vice chair. He's so awesome. So we have a lot of, we're starting to get into the presentation forums. And the great news in the fall, we started to do those a lot earlier. So I'd like to continue on that track and start working on getting some of these articles discussed and presented so that we have more time. So with that, I need to know whether this committee agrees that we can meet 2 times in February. I think we're going to need it. And so the dates would be the 12th and the, oh, they're so close.
They're the same week.
They can't be the same week, though. Oh,
They are.
That's so ugly. The problem we have sometimes with the months we have this, and, where they come really close, and the issue we always have is meeting room. That's our obstacle. It's the meeting room. And this is the only times when the meeting room is free. So that would be twice in a week. I'm not sure that's going to work. And then the next meetings would be March 11th and March 21st. So what we could do February 15th and then do 2 meetings in March. So I'm going to propose a vote and ask for a vote that we have one meeting in February, which would be on the 15th.
I move that we have one meeting on the 15th and 2 meetings in March.
That's correct. Would that make sense?
I'll second.
Okay, so I've got
Second.
Pompey seconding.
Pompey second.
Yep, and now I'm going to open it up to discussion. Yes, Claire?
There will be the 15th of February, March 11, and March 21st.
Yes. And then, do you have a follow-up question, Claire? No. Mr. Hutchinson?
I would also ask you to work with Mr. Golden, because we are on in the charter review, are on an accelerated schedule also. And I would like for everything to sync out. So,
I'm not clear on what you mean.
well,
We can't move our dates. Just to be clear, these are the only dates we have that we can secure this room and it be televised. And I have gone around and around and around. So unless you're saying that you want us to not have meetings so that Mr. Golden and the Charter Committee will have access to this room.
no.
Okay. Okay, so can I get I've got a motion, I've got a second. This is discussion. Any other discussion? Let's go for a vote. We are voting on having our next meetings, February 15th, March 11th, March 21st. Okay? Precinct 1.
Yes.
Precinct 2.
Yes.
Precinct 3.
Yes.
Precinct 4.
Yes.
Precinct 5. Precinct 6.
Yes.
Precinct 7.
Yes.
Precinct 8.
Yes.
Precinct 9, yes. Precinct 10.
Precinct 10, yes.
Precinct 11.
Precinct 11, yes.
Precinct 12.
Yes.
Precinct 13.
Yes.
Precinct 14.
Not here.
I always give them the chance to show up. Precinct 15.
Yes.
Precinct 16.
Yes.
Precinct 17.
Yes.
Precinct 18.
Yes.
Very good. The motion carries. That's when our meetings will be. Mr. Brewster.
Motion to close.
Second.
Amen. All right. Everybody drive safely home.
Those in favor?
All those in favor. Well, apparently we don't even need to do that according to Mr. Very good. Everybody drive safely home.
Who seconded that?